And usually the assumption here is that to become a better driver, you just have to put in more seat time, and more seat time equals better driver, but that's not the entire equation. My friends, I want to share a couple secrets with you that aren't really well known in the car community that I think are going to make you a better driver. And I am no driving god, but I want to share with you the tips and tricks that I've learned over the years that have accelerated my rate of driver growth and driver improvement. And I think a lot of these things are usually ignored or underemphasized, but it's going to be the difference between you actually enjoying driving and being the best possible driver you can be versus being more egocentric. So first of all, why is this so important? Well, you're gonna buy and sell cars. You're gonna modify your cars. You're gonna have different experiences in cars. And the one thing you take from car to car is the driver mod. How good of a driver are you? Can you handle FR, MR, RR, FF? Can you handle manual? Can you handle automatic? Can you find the limit of grip and understand how to manage understeer and oversteer across those various engine and drivetrain layouts? So if you are a driving enthusiast, and if you're watching this channel, you almost certainly are, then of course the game becomes, how can I improve my driver skill set in the quickest way possible? And that's not just because we should better ourselves, but because you will inherently find it enjoyable to see progress. The same way that when you go to the gym and you get stronger and you find yourself more motivated and enjoying the gym more because you're seeing results, the same thing happens in any endeavor, including driving. As you work on your skill, become a better driver, you're not only going to become faster, you'll also be safer, and you're going to have more fun doing it. And usually the assumption here is that to become a better driver, you just have to put in more seat time, and more seat time equals better driver. But that's not the entire equation, because there are many people who have far less seat time than others that are far better drivers. So while seat time is an important variable, it's not the only thing. So there is a method and technique to learning anything. For those who aren't familiar with the other stuff I do, I have some other YouTube channels focused more on learning, especially for med students. And I don't think you have to be some mega genius to learn well and perform well enough to get into med school, to get into residency, to become a doctor. And a lot of it comes down to your actual techniques. There are evidence-based learning and study strategies that accelerate your rate of learning, reduce the rate of forgetting, and then help you also apply concepts and manipulate them and transform them in your head so that you can apply it to an exam, even when the question is asking some derivative or some way that you have to apply the information, not just regurgitate something that you memorized. That's a way that they assess whether you understand something or whether you've just memorized an isolated fact. And if you are a student and you want to know how to get better grades, and especially while studying less than you currently do, then check out my Med School Insider channel link below, and I'll show you the same tactics I use to get top 0.1 percentile on the MCAT and get a top USMLE score, and et cetera, et cetera. Because again, it's not how smart you are, it's actually the strategies you use. So going back to driving, oh, what great etiquette. And I appreciate that, but blind corner. Thank you. So there are a few steps here. Step number one is get more seat time. Again, seat time is not the only variable, but the sooner you start, the better. Generally, when you are younger, some of us are fortunate enough to have parents that put us into karts and such. When we're 5 years old, 10 years old, you have neuroplasticity on your side. Your brain is like a sponge. It is learning these things and creating neural pathways, stronger connections, and building a skill set that is very hard to replicate at that speed when you're older. So a lot of the fastest people I know, they actually started karting when they were children. And it is a huge advantage, but if you're anything like me, then you didn't have that opportunity to do so, and that's okay. We're still gonna work on improving our rate of progression, even if we don't have that foundation. So step number one is putting the ego aside, because if you have the ego that, hey, I'm already a great driver, I don't have much to learn, then you're not gonna look for the opportunities to improve your driving, because doing so would be cognitive dissonance. You are contradicting your own beliefs to say, oh, I want to become a better driver, but I'm already a great driver. You're essentially saying, I don't need to become a better driver, I already know everything. So you have to put the ego aside. And that means when you go on the racetrack, or even when you're driving in the canyons, know your limits, know that you are not Max Verstappen, and you never will be Max Verstappen. And that's okay. Same thing when it comes to every guy thinks that they are the absolute king when it comes to driving and also in bed, but the reality is not everyone can be above average, obviously, right? So there's a bell curve in performance and all these things, and just acknowledge that you're probably not at the top end of the bell curve, especially if you don't have karting experience from when you were a kid and, you know, hundreds and thousands of hours of seat time as in professional race series, etc., etc. Just put the ego aside. That's going to make everything else a lot easier. Because having that ego puts the blinders up and you're not able to see the opportunities for growth. Step 2 is actually picking the right car, and this does relate to ego. A lot of guys want to pick the fastest, most expensive, highest performance car that they can afford. But if you don't have the skill set developed yet to handle that, you're going to stunt your development. The reason why is when you start off with a lighter, less powerful car, you're more readily able to approach that limit repeatedly. So when you go to the track, you can balance, understeer, oversteer, and turn your nannies off and not bend the car because there's more margin for error. Because if you're going to overcook a corner, brake too late, you're going much slower in a Miata. You have time to correct versus being in, you know, that McLaren 750S that just passed us. So earlier today, I reviewed a 488 Pista Spider, and the owner actually tracks his BRZ. Even though he has clearly the budget, the 488 Pista Spider is, you know, 800 to 1.1 million in terms of market value right now. He has the budget for many other cars that he can track and easily afford to do so. So why would he start with the BRZ? Well, obviously, if you're trying to improve your driver skill, you put the ego aside. You have a car that is more modest, and it's going to allow you to accelerate that driver skill. Because if you've ever been to the track, you're going to see a lot of guys that have some really high performance car, and they just go fast on the straights, and then when they get to the corners, they brake way too early. They're nowhere near the limit of grip mid-corner. They have no idea what understeer and oversteer even are, and then they get on the throttle way too late. So a more experienced driver in their car would literally save 20, 30 seconds per lap. It is absolutely insane how slow they're going. But they're limiting and stunting their growth because they chose to go with a car that is far above their current skill set. And step 3 is actually tightening the feedback loop. So you learn best when you actually have a feedback loop to know what you're doing right and what you need to improve. So I post my videos on YouTube. You guys see my various track videos from back when I was tracking my FRS, and then my GR86, and now my Miata, and you'll see a progression. And I get feedback from you, the viewers, and also from various coaches and things in real life that are working with me at these track days to help me identify areas for improvement. And sometimes it's just friends, sometimes it's more experienced coaches, and so on. But doing so illuminates the blind spots that I have to see what could I be doing better that I'm not already aware of. There are many things that I know that I need to improve, but there are also other things that I don't even know that I need to improve. I'm blind to them. So they can help illuminate those blind spots and give me tips to address my, my overall driving strategy. Now, I personally found it most helpful to begin with autocross. I don't think everyone has to start there, but autocross is a lot less intimidating. There's the actual risk there is far lower than a track day. It's a lot easier on your car, and you can dance with understeer, oversteer in a much safer environment, lower limits. So I learned a lot of car control with my old Scion FRS at autocross. It was also much more affordable. I was a broke med student paying my way through college, paying my way through med school, so I didn't have the budget to go to track days, which are going to be hundreds of dollars. Autocross was $60, and you didn't even have to do an oil change immediately after because it's so light on the car since it's generally a 45-second lap, and then your car cools down again. So one other little bonus tip here is if you do have access to certain sports or hobbies that test your balance, I find that there's a clear correlation between the vestibular function of, meaning like your inner ear, like how you can tell balance and G-forces and rotation, stuff like that, and your ability to handle a car at the limit. So there are certain people I met on the track who are very advanced for how few track days they have, and one guy had done windsurfing. Another guy was very accomplished in either skiing or snowboarding, I forget. Myself, I was on a dance team for 4 years in college where we traveled and competed, and balance was a big part of that. So I do find that those who have experience with more balance-oriented sports and things like this can actually develop their vestibular system and learn to trust it more, so that when they get in a car and they start experiencing oversteer, it's a lot easier for them to catch it than someone who doesn't have that development. And this also feeds into the point of sim racing. I think sim racing can be a very powerful tool to help improve driver skill. But if you are like me or like these other people that have developed more of a vestibular system, then you may notice that on the sim, because you don't have G-force, even I've tried 6 Degree of Freedom, it's still not the same as obviously being in a real car. it can be harder and there's more of a learning curve in the sim to actually catch oversteer, because now you have to rely on only the steering, the force feedback, and your vision rather than any kind of G-force. So sim racing can be a very powerful tool, but just be mindful of that. I think there's a ton of overlap. I'm trying to get better at sim racing myself. I have a new channel called Jabal and Sim Racing. I think real life is a lot easier for me. I think sim racing has much more of a learning curve. But again, that depends on your relative experiences, strengths, and weaknesses. So anyway, my friends, these are some tips that have helped me improve my driver skill. I still have a ton to learn, but I like to think that by using these tools and tactics, I've been able to learn at a much faster rate than I would otherwise, and I hope you find them helpful as well. Be safe out there, have fun, much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in that next one.